Welcome back, everyone. I'm T.
And I'm Nessa.
And together we are the Casual Fangirls. We are so glad to be here to continue our coverage of Amazon's The Rings of Power with the season finale, episode 8, entitled Alloyed. True identities are revealed, the story ends for some, and new chapters begin for others. Now, Nessa, if this episode has taught us anything, it's that adventures should be shared. So before we get into the episode, we have a special guest joining us, my best friend, and the friend that I've been alluding to all season that comes to me with did you know this? Did you know that? Super geek for the Lord of the Rings stories. Lawrence, welcome.
Yes. Hello.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you here. So we're going to just jump right into it because we have a lot to cover. We'll be covering this episode by following the storylines like we've been doing all season rather than going chronologically. But first, let's talk about our overall feelings about the episode. Let's start with Nessa. How would you describe the season finale of the first season of Rings of Power without any spoilers?
Without any spoilers. So we are back again with our running theme, right? Touching the darkness. And we see so many different variations of that, which I love. I think that's a great theme that Tolkien runs with, which is are you evil? Are you good? Or do we just all have it within us and we got to make these choices? And I love when stories explore things like that rather than just having you're bad, you're good, and that's how things go. Mm-hmm. It's never like that in the real world, right? So we see a lot of that. I think for me, it also enhanced the Lord of the Rings movies, the original trilogy. Especially watching Galadriel's relationship with Halbrand, I'm just oh, this makes the story richer. It makes it even deeper for me. And I love that. And overall, I thought they stuck the landing for the season. I thought they did. I got a lot of the answers that I needed, and the answers that I didn't get, I was okay, it makes sense why they would save it for the next season. So I was into it. Lawrence, what about you? What was your overall feel?
I think my overall feel was very similar. I think that I like that it started tying up a lot of loose ends I had in my head. Wait, this is not making sense, especially for someone who's read the books and not all the books, but who's read enough of them so I could put pieces together. I was that's not adding up. This is not adding up. This is not adding up. But as you see, okay, I see why they did this. Okay, this makes sense. Okay, finally we see this person.
Yeah,
it's just trying to make more sense to me.
Okay, gosh. Wait, so before we move on though, for the audience though, Lawrence, tell us what is your background with the story with the Lord of the Rings? How deep into it are you?
I've seen all the movies. I've read the Lord of the Rings. I've read The Hobbit, and I've read some of his smaller works, breathe through them, the parts there and there. So I know a lot about the backstory.
Okay.
Even before this current time that we're in, so I know the backstory, the general backstory. I know it. So when some things are this is not supposed to happen now, this is not supposed to happen now, and I was okay. At first, it was very confusing to me because I didn't realize what they were doing. They did compress time a lot in the show, and I guess they had to. Mm-hmm. They can't expand it a series over what 3,000-4,000 years. So I guess they had to compress time. But in them not explaining that's what they did in the beginning to the audience, I was confused at first. But after a while, I was okay, you just ignore it. You literally just have to ignore it
and just go with the story.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. All right, T, what were your impressions of the finale?
So, as anyone who's been following us know that I am the casual fan for this story. Out of everyone on the line today, I'm the most casual viewer of this. And I thought the show was slow throughout the season, but I will say that this final episode, as you both said, does a really good job of wrapping everything up and kind of paying off all the slow burn that's been happening over the season. So I found it very exciting and satisfying to finally get some answers to questions that they purposely had us hold on to for the entire season. I'm pleased with it. I do have some comments about where this episode as a season finale leaves us for the next season, but we'll get to that at the end.
Yes, absolutely. And so before we get into the episode, T, I need you to give the spoiler warning.
I will do that. So this is our spoiler warning. We are going to talk about everything from the season finale of the first season of Rings of Power on Amazon. So that means anything from the Lord of the Rings movies and or books, the Hobbit movies or books, anything that Tolkien has wrote in his lifetime that's related to the story in Middle Earth is up for discussion. So it's a free world. You can stick around and just listen to us talk if you want to. If you have no experience with any of that, we would recommend you at least go back and watch this episode at the minimum. But hey, you can do what you want. I'm not going to sit here and try to dictate your life to you. If you decide to stick around, welcome back. Happy to have you. But if you decide to pause to go watch and come back, do that now and come back, and let's jump into it. Nessa, take it away.
Do it. All right, this episode, our finale, the last one, y'all. It's called Alloyed. And let's start with the Númenóreans, right? So the king is near the end of his life, and Eärien is drawing his likeness for a tomb. How she got this gig, not sure, but fine, let's go with it. And during her session with the king, he talks of restoring the old ways of Númenor in order to save it. So thinking he's talking to Queen Regent Miriel, he tells Eärien to look at the Palantir. Mm-hmm. Now, do we think that Eärien... So we don't see what she saw. Let's make that clear. Like, she pulls off the sheet, but, like, we don't see what happens after that. Do we think that she saw the destruction of Númenor? Lawrence, I'll have you say it.
Yeah, go ahead, Lawrence.
I think what else would she see? Like, from her standpoint, there's nothing else she could see but that.
Yeah.
I don't see her character being that important. I could be wrong, but what else could she show her but that?
True. I agree. I think so too. What about you, T?
I have two answers here. One, I think the answer that the show wants us to think is that she saw the destruction of Númenor, because if she didn't see that, I would assume they would show us what she saw. Like, I think the reason why they didn't show us is because they think that we already know.
We've seen it.
However, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me for the king to tell, he thinks he's talking to Muriel. There's been a lot of that going on in the last 2 weeks, by the way, with some of our fantasy stories. Just like people on the left talking to people that they don't think they know that they're supposed to be talking to. Like, that's a House of the Dragons reference. We'll get to that another time. But why would the king tell Muriel to look at it again if he didn't think there'd be a new vision? I guess is my question.
Well, does he know that she looked at it the first time?
I don't think we have that concrete answer either. I would have to go back and rewatch that episode when it's introduced to us. But my assumption was yes. Like, why wouldn't he know that she looked at it as the ruling person? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
he could have also forgot. His memory is slipping.
Yeah, that's possible. And he also gives this whole warning of like looking at it, but not watching it too deeply, not falling into it too much, because then it'll like consume you and stuff like that. So he definitely passes off that warning before he dies, which I thought was interesting. Because we've seen this, in a lot of fantasy stories where it's like you get this prophecy, right? Or you have this ability to look into the future, or look into the past, and then like you're just stuck, like sucked into it, harboring over it for years and years and years that you don't even realize what's going on around you.
I mean, centuries if we're talking about Galadriel, right?
She's been on a mission, boy. She's been on a mission.
But I think the one thing we do have to point out is that if we assume that, what's her name? I'm so bad at names.
Eärien.
Elendil's daughter.
Right.
We don't know how important she is to the story just yet. She's a little annoying. All the kids in the story are annoying to me, but we won't talk about that right now. If she did see the destruction of Númenor, what is she going to do with that information? That's the question that we're supposed to be like left pondering, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Is she going to go run and tell Pharazôn? Is she going to?
No, I don't. I think because she's the only one there out of all the whole family, I think that what it shows her is that he's the one that causes the fall of Númenor.
So you mean
not her dad? Sorry, I should have mentioned his name. For Pharazôn.
Yeah.
I think she saw something about him that would cause the fall of Númenor. Because since she's the only member of the family that's still there, she's technically not technically, but she's in a position where she could make a difference. Where if she sees that, oh, he's the one who caused it, she could tell her father something on her father's return about him trying to seek power.
Potentially. I don't mind that.
Because, I mean, Muriel's coming back, but she's blind, right? And we know Farazan has been essentially ruling Numenor while she's
been creeping like...
Yes. He's been climbing the people love him. They adore him. They respect him. They listen to him. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. But speaking of Muriel, right? Muriel, Elendil, and the soldiers, they're on their way back to Numenor. Elendil confesses that he made the choices that he made because essentially he's a supporter of the elf and men alliance of old, right? He goes back to a previous line where Muriel asks him, "What does your name mean?" And she was like, "I heard it mean elf lover," right? Or friend of elf, whatever kind of thing. So he basically brings that back up and he's like, "You was right. You knew. You saw me." And he just never thought that it would cost everyone so much, though. He didn't think that it would lead everybody here. But regardless, Muriel is determined to like see all of this through.
How?
And
Sorry. Sorry, I had to.
Oh, you got me. That was a good...
Come back all the time, please.
Yes. Okay.
How she gonna see you?
How? As they approach Numenor, they see black sails signaling that the king has died. All right. Let's see. Okay. Woo! Bring it back. All right.
So, speaking of Muriel, right?
Yes.
And her seeing things through. What stood out to me about this particular scene, especially her, being on the deck of the ship, blindfolded, coming into her city, not being able to see it, knowing that there's something wrong, and of course the audience and everyone else can see black sails in the harbor and see that that means that her father died. It makes me feel really sad for Muriel because, in my opinion, she didn't have much choice in everything that was happening. And then coming off of like the conversation where Elendil was like, I made these choices because I want to see the elves and the men restore their alliance. I don't think Muriel had that much of a choice, right? Like she was like, no, we're not going to do this. But then the tree started melting and she's like, well, then I guess I don't have a choice. I got to go do this. So I just feel like she's getting like the super short end of the stick here and just trying to be a good leader, a great leader, and just in the last couple of episodes, she's just been getting like nothing to me. So I just wanted to call that out that like, when it comes to duty, she's been the one that stands out the most as having the least amount of agency in this story. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about that.
I mean, she definitely did get the short end of the stick. She paid some of the bigger costs of things. I mean, Elendil believes that Isildur is dead, but we know that's not the case. Spoiler.
He shows that, though.
But yeah, he went off and made these choices more of his own agency versus Muriel, but she still could have said no. A lot of the Numenorians were like, why are we going to fight this war? Like, F them. Like, we should stay exactly where we're at. And she could have aligned with those people, but she chose not to, and not to mash up too many stories. But Game of Thrones, it reminds me of, what's her name? Rhaenyra seeing the dagger, right? And knowing of Aegon's prophecy. And it's like, I'm seeing all these signs. I know these prophecies. And I feel like I need to act in this way, but she can't share that with the people. So the fact that she's deciding to continue with this journey and stick around with it and like deciding to keep fighting, that's her. It's a choice mixed with duty. She's in a tough spot.
It's a choice to follow duty, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Which I don't think a lot of other people in this story are even in a position to have to make that choice, I guess is what I'm trying to point out.
I don't think of it as a choice. She saw what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
if Numenor falls. And it's like, if I don't do all of those things, Numenor is gonna fall. So it's like,
Possibly, but we've also seen where chasing prophecy has made that prophecy come true.
right.
So how many times have we looked at stuff and we've been like, dang, if they just sat on their ass and didn't do nothing, like we'd be okay. Like, but no, I get it. Like, I think, because I can't imagine, like, if you have that vision, your goal is to make it possible that this vision does not come true, right? Like, that's gonna take over your brain. Like, I can only imagine. I'm like the ultimate overthinker, so I can only imagine that I would be sitting there like, dang, if I brush my teeth 3 times today, is that gonna mess up stuff? If I walk backwards and turn around and spin, can I make this happen? Like, it would just be
what OCD is. Honestly,
it would just be on my brain all the time, every time. All right, let's move on. So basically, guys, that was the Numenorians. That was it. We're moving on to the Harfoots and the Strangers, where things get juicy. All right, so the stranger is on his own, searching for the constellations, when he loses the apple that Nori gave him, this wonderful gift. And Nori picks up the apple, but wait a minute, hold up. That ain't Nori, y'all. That ain't Nori. It's our evil trio, and in Elfish, they say, "We are here to serve you, Lord Sauron." Record scratch. What was y'all reaction to this scene?
I legit was like, somebody lying. I yelled it at the screen, and then I called Lawrence, and I was like, "Did you start yet? Because they lying in the first 5 minutes."
I was like, make it make sense, because it's not making sense.
Yes. I was so mad. I stood up and started yelling at the screen. I was like, "Yo, liars! No!" Because it really would have devastated me, like, if this was the true path that they took. So I'm glad that we were all on the same page, and we was like, nah, this ain't it. This ain't it.
Easy. It was too easy.
Yes. It was definitely too easy.
And us being the fantasy story consumers that we are, it was literally the first scene, and it was like, okay, like, story's got a story, show's got a show. So are you really about to do this, like if this was actually, you're not doing it in the first 5 minutes of the episode. You're just not. You're going to wait. So that and all of the other things we just said, I was like, no, that's not what it is. But what is it?
Yes. I was a little nervous, though. I ain't even going to lie. So our trio, the ascetic, the nomad, and the dweller, they tell the stranger that his powers, the more that his powers grow, the more that he'll remember. And he learns that the stars that he's looking for can only be found in Rune, a land far to the east. So during the scene, we see the stranger's powers kind of get out of control, and they put him to sleep. The wind is swirling, the trees are bending, fire is, firing and doing all those things. What did you guys have any thoughts about this scene, like, of what was happening? And then they put him to sleep. They're like, take a break, time out. Lawrence, did you have any?
And that scene, I was still stuck. I'm like, that cannot be him. Like, come on, what y'all doing? Like, stop it. Y'all playing with me. Like, if it was Sauron, like, I would have just turned off the TV.
Yeah. You were like, show over.
The whole time I'm watching, it reminded me of when in Lord of the Rings, when he came back after being killed. He came back, and he didn't know exactly who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And when they call him Gandalf, it's like, oh, that's what they called me.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the whole memory thing. Reminded me of that. But I guess since it was the second time, his memory came back faster in Lord of the Rings than this being his first time that he was probably awakened.
Oh, I like that.
I have comments.
Go ahead.
So that made me think. So spoiler, the stranger is Gandalf, right? We're fine. Is he? I don't know. We never actually get his name.
We'll speculate on that a little bit more later.
But to Lawrence's point, when we figure out that this is Gandalf, so in Lord of the Rings, when he comes back after fighting the Balrog, right? Like does like something. I wonder what he did before this reincarnation. Like now my brain is like, what did he do that knocked him out so much? Like, is this the birth of Gandalf, or are we seeing? It's not the birth, because they say like you need to, it's going to take time for you to get your memories back. So you've been here before. What happened that made him lose all his memories? Like now I have that question.
I'm gonna assume
when you were fighting were you part of fighting Morgoth?
That's what I
bringing down Sauron. Like, did you team up with Adar to bring down Sauron? Like I have like mad questions about all that.
What do you think, Law?
Really good questions. I actually did not think about that.
I didn't either.
I did not think about that, but I am gonna assume that he had to have died either fighting Morgoth or fighting Sauron. That's my only assumption.
I think that's what makes the most sense for the story, for sure. But yeah, I definitely didn't even think about that. Like, what happened to him that he had to die and come back, or whatever the case was, that he landed in this comet form, basically.
Right. Yeah, and I'm gonna go back to just one final thing. In a previous episode, we realized that the stranger was pretty much the Avatar, right? And I think we saw more a larger
water, air, fire.
And if I'm being completely honest, this is a joke, obviously. But when I watched the Lord of the Ring movies and I read the Hobbit book. I didn't watch the Hobbit movies. The wizards' powers make no sense to me, like how they work, what the rules are. And us making a joke that he's the Avatar actually makes way more sense to me, that like wizards just control the elements for the most part. Like that makes 100% sense to me. And I think it also fits in with this idea that Tolkien is like super into the earth and trees and like natural nature and all that stuff. I'm not saying that this is canon. I'm just saying for the casual fan, making that connection is actually helping me get over some blockers that I have with like understanding individual power sets.
And a little bit of backstory. The wizards, as we call them, but they didn't give them that name yet, they were sent to Middle Earth to help the people of Middle Earth during the time of Morgoth, to help them fight Morgoth. That's why that was their true purpose, why they were sent to Middle Earth, to just help the people of Middle Earth.
Got it. Okay, so now things are adding up. Nice. Got it. All right, so Nori and the gang catch up with them and try to rescue the stranger. Sadak is hit with a dagger, and I immediately thought it was curtains for him, my boy. The stranger eventually defeats the trio, and as they realize that he is not Sauron, they call him Istar. Sadak watches his last sunrise, y'all. So there's a whole kind of like fight scene as they're trying to rescue the stranger, and we see various forms of magic that we haven't previously seen in the show, right? So first with whoever one of the trio is, right, transforming. So she plucks something off of Nori's head. Now she can turn into Nori. I think they plucked the stranger's hair, so now she can turn into stranger. So we've never seen that before in this series. I don't even think we've seen it in Lord of the Rings. I can't remember if they did anything like that in The Hobbit, because I haven't seen The Hobbit in a long time. Nope. So we've never seen this on screen before.
No, but I think it makes sense because, and again, I'm having a lot of these epiphanies in real time. It's so good talking to both of you at the same time. A treat so far. Lawrence has been telling me the entire show that Sauron is a shapeshifter, which is essentially what this one of the trio is. I wonder if we're just seeing like broken down pieces of Sauron or Morgoth's, whoever's power sets.
That'd be interesting. Ooh.
I'm on one today. See what happens when we record early?
All right. So Lawrence, did you have any comments about the fight scenes, the effects that we saw? Did the effects work for you?
It didn't do much for me, to be honest. I was like, he's controlling the elements. Which we haven't seen him do much in Lord of the Rings. Did we see him control like?
I feel like there's been fire. So I'm in the middle of reading The Hobbit right now, and so I'm at the point where, spoiler if you haven't read The Hobbit, it's coming. where they escape the goblins and they're in the trees, and he starts lighting the pine cones on fire, and he's like throwing them down. So we've seen him do like things with fire in that kind of sense. We've seen, I think, times where like the scene that you mentioned when he does come back, like the trees were like bending and swaying and the wind was swirling. So we've seen stuff like that. We've never seen like the freezing of the water and that kind of stuff, but we've seen little hints that, okay, he does things here. You shall not pass. Breaks around, that whole thing. But I think this is the first time that we've seen everything combined together. Does that change how y'all feel about like Gandalf's powers going forward, or any of the wizards that
we don't know it's Gandalf yet, technically?
Right. But any of the wizards that we've seen, right? Like, does that have an effect of how y'all view further down the line, Lord of the Rings, hobbits, wizards?
You know,
it's just like,
it does a little bit, because it's like, I guess the question is, if this is Gandalf, or if Gandalf has these powers being a wizard, being Istar, could he have used more elemental powers to shape the events of Lord of the Rings? That's the question, right? Like, could he have gone to Mordor and like did something with the lava and the fire there? Or could he have flew Frodo and Sam like on the wind? And like, like, I guess that's the question. And
I might have an answer for that. I think in them being sent to Middle Earth to help the people of Middle Earth, they were not allowed to directly enter the conflict between Morgoth and Sauron. They were not supposed to directly intervene.
So they're like Eternals.
Yeah.
Before we found out what the Eternals were really there to do, but like they're like the Eternals.
They're like in the background. Like, this is new technology. Go see if you do that against like Sauron. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess in a sense they were not supposed to directly intervene, just to help. They're like helpers.
I guess.
It's corny.
Because if that was the case, they would just teleport to Mount Doom and drop that ring in.
Essentially, right?
But why don't you teleport Frodo there and then kick him in?
Let him not kick him in. Damn.
I mean, spoiler: Frodo doesn't want to get rid of it, so kick his behind end.
There's that. All right, so during this whole fight and this whole scene, the stranger is kind of like giving in and being like, dang, they show me who I am. I really am a danger. Like, I just want to give up. He's really about to let all the Harfoots die. This little gang die. And I was like, wow, that's kind of messed up. And it takes Nori to make the stranger realize that he really is good. And, tells him that like, hey, it's the choices that you make. You have these powers, but you can choose good. I believe you're good. I believe in you. And then that's when he gets up and he finally defeats the trio, right? Or I thought they died, but T, you said they might have been just banished to like a dark realm or something like that.
Shadow realm or something.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're probably going to see them again at some point. I don't know how or when or if they'll ever be banished for good. My assumption is that they will, because we don't see them in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. But I don't know. I think we're going to see them again.
Law, do you think we're going to see them again?
I think we might, depending on who they are. Some of those people, they never die, just like Sauron technically never died. He just loses a form of some type, and then comes back later on when he regains his strength.
So do we get any answers on like what are they? People? Are they witches? Are they who are we dealing with here?
Followers of the dark, followers of Sauron. I mean, it could be that Morgoth or Sauron created them to be like, because they're not elves,
but they speak Elvish, but they're not elves.
That's a good point.
Keep in mind, they could be elves. They could be
elves
that turned. So going back. In the books, when Morgoth was, when the elves were created, some of them decided to stay in I'm gonna go a little further back. So the elves were awoken in the east, or what we call the Islamons, or Ruin is where the elves were awoken. Elves, men, and dwarves were all awoken in that area. So that's where they first came up, and then most of them left that area after Morgoth, but some of them stayed behind, and some of them that stayed behind, Morgoth somehow turned them and like manipulated them, and then turned some of them into orcs. So there could be some that just look like elves because they were elves at one point. Good elves.
Interesting. I think we'll see them again. I think they will pop back up in season 2, and I feel like they're going to give us more information of who they are. But I could also see them like just glossing over this and being like, yada, 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 yeah, that happened, bye.
Yeah, and I mean, we're a little scarred with that because, again, like in another series we're watching, it could be like the Triarchy, where it's just like, yeah, plot device, but we never actually learn anything about them, right?
Exactly. And also in this scene, Sadak dies, y'all.
Yeah, the only black person in the episode.
I was heartbroken. Oh my gosh. Damn. So just like seeing him sit on that log and he was like, I really just want to sit here and watch the last sunrise.
I'm coming, Elizabeth.
Hello, gangster tear, man. I was just like, damn. And he was, yes, I'm coming, Elizabeth. He said, my missus will be waiting for me. And we've been seeing a lot in our fantasy stories of these guys wanting to go back to their true loves. And it just kept reminding me of Harry Potter, of all these stories, and death is the next great adventure, and all these kinds of things. And he welcomes death as an old friend, right? Instead of like, you know, because I mean, guys, the stranger's right there. He could have done a little something. He could have froze his little wound. I don't know. He could have done something to help the man out. And he's just kind of like, damn, you dying? Jeez. tough time, bro. I love the way that Sada kind of welcomes death, and he's just like, it's my time. I'm wandering off the path.
Listen, they make songs of the ones that never made the journey. What do you expect him to do?
Good point.
Yeah, there's going to be some good songs coming out of that, especially from Poppy.
I know. And my thought too was like, ooh, who's going to guide these people now that he's gone? Because he's the elder. He's the one who has all the knowledge. He knows how to read the maps. He knows the seasons. He knows everything. And I was just like, whose job is this now?
Poppy.
And we kind of think that comes to Poppy. All right. So the stranger tells Nori that he has to go to Rune to discover more about himself, right, and what's going on. And we learn that Istar means wizard. Nori says her goodbyes to the Harfoots and actually sets off with the stranger. So we know that he's not Sauron. We know that he is a wizard. Do we still think that he is Gandalf the wizard?
Yes.
The cookie crumbs they left for us.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of crumbs and there's a trail that wants us to believe that it's Gandalf. But is it possible it could be like Gandalf's mentor? Like maybe.
Okay, yes, it is possible. Yes. But I mean, the fact that they gave us that like sweet scent like line.
Yeah, follow your nose.
Follow your nose. Yeah, like it's very much they did that on purpose.
Yeah. And I mean, Law, you can tell us more about this because we talked about compressing the timeline earlier, right? But like, technically, Gandalf is not supposed to be here in this time. It's a little early.
Was he? What? We're in the Second Age. Is he early though?
I believe he is. He? I thought he was. I thought that was the whole argument with a lot of people is that it would be too early for it to be Gandalf.
I have a theory.
Go for it.
So if I trust that Lawrence is right, that the wizards were sent to help Middle Earth against Morgoth. If Gandalf was part of that original crew, then him being around now makes sense. And everyone thinking that he only came around during the third age could also be true if he doesn't have any memories of what's about to happen.
Or if he doesn't have a name yet.
Or if he doesn't.
Each time he came as a different name.
Right.
Yeah.
A different name each time.
Okay.
Even when he came back, he was like, in Lord of the Rings, he was like, yeah, that's what they used to call me, right?
Okay. Yeah. So that adds it up. Okay, I'll give you that.
The math could be mathin'.
The math could be mathin'.
It might just be semantics of just like, actually, my name wasn't Gandalf then, so
at the time.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. Any thoughts about watching Nori's goodbyes, joining the stranger, the fact that Poppy doesn't come with her Samwise doesn't join her?
Like, you got a stranger with your kid. You ain't gonna send nobody else?
Not just a stranger, a 10-foot stranger.
A 10-foot wizard. I know now. A 10-foot wizard. But I guess to them, like, he's proven enough that, like, all right, I am
He's
good.
good,
I am on
yeah.
your side. So, here's where I am.
The New Yorker in me is very much like, send somebody else with that baby. You don't know that man from nowhere.
I was shocked that Poppy didn't go with her.
I was shocked until I saw that they needed her, right? Because when I forget her name, the elder was like had the map upside down, and Poppy was like, "You're reading that wrong." I was like, "Oh, okay, this is why Poppy needs to stay because they don't know what they're doing."
Yeah, and I think it makes sense for Poppy to stay too because she's lost her whole family, right? And so the Harfoots are her family, and to leave that, I think, would be even more extremely difficult for her to do. But I still was expecting her, like, when she did that last little run back, I thought she'd been like, I'm coming with you. And
I thought so, too.
I was let down by that moment. I felt bad about it.
But they made it clear because of her knowledge, she would be the next person to lead her people.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Any last thoughts about the Harfoots and the stranger before we move on?
We have to make it clear to people how we assume that it was Gandalf and not another wizard.
Oh, go ahead, start kick it off then.
Because of a quote that they said in Ring of Power about smell and stuff. In Lord of the Rings, when they were in Moria, Gandalf told to Merry that if you're not sure about something, follow your nose. And that's why we're alluding that this person talking about following your nose have to be Gandalf. Who else could it be?
Unless they all learn the same stuff at the Wizard Academy, but
I forgot that's a possibility.
But also to add to that, obviously he's fond of the Harfoots, who are ancestors of the Hobbits, who Gandalf is really fond of in The Hobbit and in Lord of the Rings. The other thing I want to mention real quick is that his English picked up mad quick.
Those memories coming back.
He know how to speak all the things now. And I was just like, this is throwing me off. Like,
because Nori asked him, like, oh, do you remember more? And he's like, fragments, pieces, but it's coming back to me. So I think that was, the whole thing. But you're right. It was like, he went from English 101 beginners to like advanced. And I was like, oh, okay, here we are. We on our way. But I'm okay with that. I'm like, we need to keep it moving. We need to keep it moving.
Should be good.
Are we going to talk about why he's going to Rune or save that for later?
Oh, no, go ahead. I don't know nothing about Rune. You tell me.
So I think that he's going to Rune to probably try to find Saruman. Because Saruman, at that time, was the leader of all the wizards.
Oh. So
I feel like that's why he's going. Saruman has to be there somewhere. The other wizards have to be there somewhere. So I feel like they might be in Rune, but at the same time, Rune is not a good place. That's
expand. Do tell.
I'm pretty sure that's where Morgoth, planted his seed. That's where so there's a lot of more followers
of Morgoth over there.
That would explain why the trio was there and they came from there. Law, this is why we have you here, my brother. for
So,
putting those things together.
weren't you also telling me that like the olive, how they sell it? They don't say elephants. What they say?
Oliphants. Oliphants.
Oliphants. That they came from there too, like from.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone who was like coming against Gondor and everything in Two Towers or whatever it was, I forget. It was Return of the King, I think. Came from there too.
Came
So I
from
think
there.
They were men of Rune.
They were men of ruin, yeah. Or they
I
actually
never
they
know
call
what the
them
hell that meant.
they call them the Istalins or something like that.
Oh.
So he's going to find somebody, Saruman, I'm assuming, but at the same time he's about to walk into trouble.
Oh.
with Nori, this should be
With Nori.
perfectly fine. It'll be
It's
great.
always a hard-foot hobbit just trailing at his ankles, walking into problems.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Good to know. That was very necessary information. I love that. All right, let's get on to Elrond, Galadriel, Halbrand, and all them, right? Because, listen, guys, the stranger, that was the appetizer. Right here is the main course, people, okay? So Galadriel and Halbrand, they arrive in Eregion seeking help. Because remember, Halbrand got this mysterious wound, and only elfish magic or elfish medicine can help him. So here he comes, waltzing into Eregion. And so Elrond and Celebrimbor are concerned. They are like, we don't got no answers for Gil-galad. What are we going to say? What are we going to tell the High King? They're trying to figure all this out. Galadriel pulls up. She catches up with Elrond. And Elrond basically declares that he should have trusted Galadriel and will not make that mistake again, which y'all know promises in these fantasy stories always come around to bite somebody in the ass. So we know that's going to be an issue. And then Galadriel reveals that she did not go to Valinor because she didn't feel worthy. She felt like there were still things that she needed to do in Middle Earth, and so she jumped ship. Any thoughts about this reunion that we get here between these two?
Spoiler. So Lawrence and Nessa have been telling me that the way it happens in the books is that Galadriel's daughter marries Elrond.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I could think about when I was watching this scene. I was like, y'all seem real close. And about the same age.
You still think there's energy?
Yeah. How is this all going to play out? So that's what was on my mind, frankly.
Yeah.
And it's weird because they seem about the same age. You never know how old the elf is.
Right.
They seem around, they could be around the same age, 1,000 years or so.
I think she's a little bit older because Elrond says you found me as an orphan, but he didn't say how young he was when he was orphaned. But then also I was like, but where was your twin brother? Like, did they just leave you? Like, I don't understand that part of the story. Like, Law, do you have any insight for us in terms of like Elrond and how he gets orphaned and all that?
I don't know. That part caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting him to say that he was an orphan. Like I knew they were both half man, half elf, and I knew that they always said that all those relationships always ended bad.
Yeah.
Anytime that an elf and the last two times that happened, it had ended up in tragedy. So I'm guessing somehow the parents ended up dying and they became orphans, both parents, which makes sense.
Yeah, because we know Elros decides to go to Middle Earth and like choose a mortal life and all that stuff. But I was just confused, like the way he was saying it felt like there was more to it that we just don't know. And I was just like, I need this story. Give me the story.
Yeah, it was giving me like Moses vibes, like found in a
water,
basket, like down the river vibes. And she was like, "Hey, look, a baby."
Yes.
I don't know. So, I mean, obviously he remembered it, so it probably wasn't a baby. But that's the vibes I was getting, and I don't know what the backstory is there.
Yeah, but I think the energy between them is more like big sister, little brother versus like romantic kind of vibe. And we know Tolkien don't do incest, so I don't think it's gonna be a Jamie Cersei thing going on. But so I think that's what it is. All right, so it's a miracle, y'all. Halbrand is healed. Hallelujah, amen. My boy's walking. He's talking. He is perfectly fine, and he finds himself in Celebrimbor's workshop. And we see some gems that were created by capturing the essence of Valinor. I believe the creator's name was Feanor. Okay, so yeah, Feanor created these jewels to capture the essence of Valinor. Halbrand's looking at them very lustily, and he takes immediate interest in the Mithril and starts advising Celebrimbor. Now, y'all, if y'all have been watching, if y'all have been with us, my theory most of this time has been that Halbrand is Sauron. And as we go through these scenes, I'm going to list out the things that make me scream at my screen that this is Sauron. So Halbrand comes up with the idea of combining the Mithril with another alloy to amplify its qualities, right? He's out here advising Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor is eating this stuff up. Nom, nom, nom. Oh, the Celebrimbor? Yes, that's me. I was like, bro.
When he did that, I was like, we know who you are.
Yes, right? He was eating it up. He's like, nobody's talked to me like that in a long time. I'm glad somebody recognized. Right? And so I don't know about y'all, but like while all this was going on, like my radar was off. My radar was beeping. And so that's when I started looking for the clues, right? As soon as he's like the Celebrimbor, I was like, all right, something's going on here. So after
wait, real quick, my radar started going off even before then. So when we see Celebrimbor just like in his office by himself, and he's like, he hears someone, he's like, who's there? I yelled at my screen. If that's Halbrand, he's Sauron. I yelled it at.
It was that walking out of the darkness that I was like.
So mine came off a couple of minutes before that. The second I see them pull up to the palace or whatever it is, I was like, oh hell no, because reading the books, we all know that. Well, if you have read the book, you know that Sauron has to aid in creating the rings.
Yes.
So the whole time I'm watching this, the Ring of Power, I'm like, okay, when are we gonna see Sauron talking to Cerebro, whatever his name is, and creating the rings? We expecting that to see them in the same place. So I was like, it is no coincidence that this dude somehow ends up at the same place and the same time that the ring is about to create. So I was like, no, that's him. It can't be anybody else. It's him, and he's been plotting. He did a good job.
after they created this new strong forge that we hear about, like in the first couple episodes, right? I need this forge. I need it by spring, and all this stuff. So okay, number one of me pointing at the screen, right? After he gives this advice, he calls it a gift. Now, I haven't read the books, but I listen to the chatter. I'm here in the multiverse and the interwebs and all this stuff. And it's known that Sauron goes around giving gifts.
Does it?
So as soon as Celebrimbor is like, oh, that's a great suggestion. He's like, no, it's a gift, my dude. Like, I was like, ooh, I don't like this. You know,
they say nothing in life is free.
So that was my number one thing. All right, so Celebrimbor suggests to Gil-galad that they make the Mithril into a circular form, a crown. The High King reveals that they have even less time than they imagine, and they need to leave Middle-earth ASAP. Apparently, when Mount Doom exploded, that pretty much accelerated everything. They're like, we got to go or we're going to die too. And Gil-galad tells everyone to pack it up. We leaving. We're out of here. This is done. Right? So now, in this scene, number two, pointing at the screen that this is Sauron, Celebrimbor says that Halbrand's suggestions were the key that unlocked the dam.
Immediately no. Immediately.
And we saw the screen go to us.
all her expressions, she's like, wait, 1 plus 1.
She was like, damn, I fucked up. At this point, she was like, I fucked up. I did this.
She knew. That's like, yeah, it's that room, and at this moment,
I used the
that's
F
when
word.
I
Damn
knew.
it.
Well, good. This is the moment I knew that I effed up.
She been effing around. That's the moment she found out.
Yeah. And then so immediately after that, clue number 3, Celebrimbor says, we're crafting a power not of the flesh, but over the flesh. And this is something that Adar says in a previous episode. So, and then the camera zooms on Galadriel, and I was just like, ooh.
2 and 3.
Carry the 4.
Wait a minute. Like, that's exactly.
Yeah.
It immediately clicked in her brain, and she was like, wait a minute. So those were the clues that were definitely building up for me. And I was like, and so like, I know we're going through this storyline by storyline, but obviously this is happening as we're finding out, as we're seeing like the stranger being called Sauron and all this stuff. And I was like, no, y'all got it mixed up. And I messed up. So Elrond asked for 3 months time, but they're granted 3 weeks. He said, I need an extension on this paper. I'm sorry, Professor. There's been a lot going on. My man said you got 3 weeks. Celebrimbor and Halbrand are hard at work getting real chummy as Galadriel asks for information about the royal lineages of the Southlands. So we witnessed the explosion from last week's trailer, and we were right that it was an elven tower. It was from the Forge. The elves are using too much force to bind the mithril to the other ores. And here comes Halbrand with some more advice, right? And he's like, we got to use less force. Reason number 4. Celebrimbor says something very interesting, right? He's like, the metals shouldn't be forced to join, but more drawn and coaxed together. And we know Sauron is a sweet talker. My guy.
So I want to point out that in that moment, what stuck out to me was, yes, Halbrand gave the suggestion of like, we're using too much force, but he took it directly from Galadriel. Do you remember? Galadriel was like, you guys are pushing yourselves. You guys are like, yourselves, like, take a break. And Halbrand was like, no, maybe that's it. It's like, we're using too much force. Like, so it was, again, him giving her credit for, like, part of the process.
Yes. Roping her in, making everyone else feel like it's their idea. And he's just kind of helping along. And, if y'all try this, it could work. And I was just like, man. Y'all don't see this happening. And also, like, to mention too, like, there's certain times where Galadriel's like, where did you hear this? Or where did you get this idea? And Celebrimbor's like, I don't know. I guess I said it somewhere. And I was like, so he's in Celebrimbor's mind.
Has to be. And we see what that looks like in a second, right?
We do. So Halbrand finds Galadriel and tells her that they're going to make 2 objects. She confronts Halbrand about who he really is. He's like, you know me. We was on the raft. We fought together. She's like, no. Who are you for real? And so she delivers the news that she found out that the last man to bear the crest that he's wearing actually died and left no heirs. And Halbrand's like, I told you I found it on a dead guy. Right? And so he messes with Galadriel's head, creating visions of her brother, basically proposing to her, and offering her power. So, casual fans, I present to you Sauron. This is the moment that is finally completely revealed that this is Sauron, this is who he is. Thoughts on the reveal, guys? Lawrence, I'm going to have you start.
Sorry, you're going to have to repeat that.
What were your thoughts
I was reading some backstory real quickly.
What were your thoughts on the reveal of Sauron? Now that it's finally been presented that it's him.
I was surprised, but not surprised. I was expecting it to happen. Like, you have to reveal him at this point. The whole point of this show, for the whole season, we have to see him. So where are we going to see him? Who is he? Like, is he gonna be just pop out of nowhere? But for them doing it the way that they did, I thought it was very smart and was clever because in the books they talked about how Sauron was in Numenor
Mm-hmm.
before. He wasn't locked up in Numenor. So we know all that. I was like, okay, I see how they tied all those pieces together. We don't know that it was they don't know that it was Sauron, but he was, you know, master of disguise.
Mm-hmm.
So I so I like how they did it. They did a good job.
I want to call out that last week I texted Lawrence and I was like, Halbrand is Sauron. And he was like, no.
Did you wait? Law, did you not think that Halbrand was Sauron? Did it?
It did.
You weren't
No,
convinced?
no, I was not convinced. I was like, how? Like, I was not convinced.
So what
But
was your theory of Sauron? Like, what did you think somebody else? Did you think we didn't see him yet?
I thought we probably didn't see him yet, and I was curious about how they were about to present it. I was like, the stranger cannot be Sauron. I knew it. I was like,
Yeah.
that's not him. So who is
Yeah.
he?
Yeah.
So I did not know how they were going to present it, but you know what? They did a good job.
They got your stamp of approval. Okay. So now in these visions, Sauron is basically like, you could be my queen. You're going to bound me to the light and I'm going to bound you to power and all these things. Do you think if Galadriel had taken his offer that he actually would have stayed good or good-ish?
No.
No.
You think he did?
Go ahead, Lawrence.
Reason being because Galadriel would not have been who she was. Because in Lord of the Rings, I'm not sure if you remember, when she met Frodo for the first time and he presented the ring to her, what did she say? In place of an evil king, you should have a queen, a dark queen. And the quote that she used was from the foundations of the earth. And that's exactly what Elrond, not Elrond, that's exactly what Halbrand said to her.
Yes.
If they team up together.
And I love that.
That was the other reference I was trying to remember. I heard something that was very familiar, and that's what it was.
Yes,
from
and
the
I love that.
Foundations of the earth.
To me, that again, like so in the beginning of the episode, right? I said that the information that we learned enriches the Lord of the Rings movies for me, and this was part of it. Like the fact that when she goes into that, I don't even know what to call it, that little possession rant that she does, right? That she is spitting back words that Sauron himself has proposed to her. And I was just like, oh, that makes this even more like deeper and complex. Like she has literally handheld him into creating the first 3 rings. And like, that's so wild. And like, what does that do to a person? Like how, her carrying it for these years and then seeing that he's back, like that had to have her messed up. But she was just like, oh, I passed the test. I'm good. I was like,
yeah.
Are you going to join the fight? She said, I have fought enough. I'm
No,
tired.
she started enough is really what she did.
She's what?
She started enough.
Yes.
Right, technically.
Because look, high key, you can blame her for Sauron coming back.
I mean, so
he would have. I feel like he would have found the way eventually. But she made it. She made this the route that he went. So.
I think it's Gil Galad who's like, this evil that you're seeking to fight, you might be actually fanning the flames and like bringing it even faster or whatever. Like you might be the one who's doing all this, and we see that throughout the season where a lot of people are like, are you sure you're not like the follower of Sauron? Are you sure you're not the one who's going to bring him back? Like, it sounds like you're his disciple. Like, you're so stuck touching the darkness. Like, are you sure that you're good? So,
it comes back to what Tamara said about people trying to not fulfill a prophecy, and in doing so, they end up actually fulfilling the prophecy.
Yeah, that's exactly what we see happening here, right? She's working so hard to make sure that he doesn't come back and helps him. Like, look,
that's the thing. Like when she had the person go and look at the Southlander lineage, you could have did that back with Elendil back in the tower in Numenor, and you didn't do it.
at all.
Right.
At all. And throughout this vision, we see him like twisting all of the things that she's done and like making it bad, right? He's like, she's like, oh, you convinced Muriel to come to Middle Earth. And he's like, no, you did that. I wanted to stay in Numenor. I don't know what you're talking about, you know? And so like seeing him.
I thought that was wild too, because even when she said it, I was like, no, you did that. Like,
Yep.
that was you.
Yeah. So flipping the script on all of the choices that she made and all the things that she's done, I was like, oh, you're brilliant. You evil for real. Because to be able to do that, and she has to now look at herself and be like, dang, I did make all these choices. She's like, you saved me. He's like, no, you saved me.
And that's another thing. What if he's saying you saved me? Was Sauron willing to give up everything at that point until he met her?
I think so.
Because Adal already killed him, technically.
Right.
Is what they say.
Right.
So was he in that point? He was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try to journey to Valinor and become good. Was that what he was trying to do in that point, or like how was he trying to save himself, or not save himself, but how did she save him?
I think he really wanted to start fresh in Numenor. I think that really was his plan. I don't think it would have lasted that long because I think eventually he still would have slipped into darkness. But I think he really was trying to stay in Numenor. I think he was ready to retire at that point in time. And like her like being like, no, you're the king of the Southlands. It's you. You have to bring people together. You have to unite the men. You have to do all these things. Come and save them. I think that's what got back into his brain of being like, I can heal Middle Earth. I can do this. And like, you know, so I think that's what he meant by like, you saved me.
Sagara's like,
I know she's like, no.
Yeah, I'm like, no. So
okay, no.
I kind of feel like if Sauron was killed, he's back. Yeah. He's a master planner, right? Like, I feel like he's a planner, in my opinion. And so I think he saw an opportunity and seized it. I don't know that he went out looking for Galadriel. I don't know that I believe that. But if he was on that raft and saw and like was able to size her up so quickly, like he saw that she was carrying around the dagger, that might be something he remembered from her brother or something like that. Like, I just feel like him playing the whole, I don't want nothing to do with the Southlands. I just want to like start over fresh. I can also believe that was a ploy. Like, he purposely did that so that Galadriel could force him into it, so that it was all her choice.
I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Lauren.
I have a question. So if she had never done that, what would have happened with Adar?
Adar would have still created Mount Doom, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think, that was his mission. I think he would have made it happen regardless. Because they were already building the tunnels and doing all the things. So right. I think that definitely would have happened. Right. I think the question is, like, if Galadriel had never got on that raft, that little shipwreck, what would have happened with Halbrand and Sauron and, you know, all that? I guess we'll never know.
I definitely think he would have made it to Mordor anyway, because, again, Mordor was going to be created with or without the Numenors and Galadriel and Halbrand. So at some point he would have found out that Mordor was created.
And returned.
Yeah, it's possible. All right, so Galadriel awakens from her vision, but doesn't tell the others the truth. She suggests making 3 rings instead of 2 in order to achieve a balance of power. She sacrifices her brother's dagger in order to create the rings because they need the purest gold and silver to bind to the mithril. And we see the rings being created, and the molten metal immediately looks like the Eye of Sauron that we know from the Lord of the Rings movies. Elrond discovers the scrolls with the information about the royal lineage of the Southlands. So he knows that he knows what Galadriel's hiding. And then she looks at him, so she know that he know, but nobody gonna tell nobody else. So obviously this secret gets kept. What did y'all make of A, Galadriel not telling anybody, and then B, Elrond keeping the secret?
It makes me angry that Galadriel got so little FaceTime in Lord of the Rings.
It does.
Because a lot of this is her fault. And she's like not owning up to it and like X, Y, and Z. And like the little snapshot we got of her in the Lord of the Rings, I just feel like did not do this backstory justice at all. I don't know. Like there's just so much depth there that we just didn't get. And maybe it's in the book, and I just didn't, get to that part yet. I didn't get to that part yet in the book, but I don't know. It just really had me thinking like, wow, what a backstory for this character.
Yeah. What do you think the motivation was for her to not tell anyone?
She's ashamed. What do you mean?
Do you think it's just that she was ashamed, or do you think that
I think she saw more to it than they revealed?
What do you mean?
Like in all the visions that she had, she could have seen how the rings could be used in their benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was like, you know what? It's easier to just not explain everything and let people make the rings than to try to explain everything. I'm like, but if I do this, like no, let me just keep it to myself.
I also think a piece of her might not be 100% sure that Sauron is bad.
Oh, that I don't buy.
Or what do I want to say here? I feel like a piece of her was like kind of considering the whole like queen bit of it. Like I think she's close.
She considered that.
Yeah, I think she's close enough to the darkness. But I think she's having a problem right now, clearly defining what bad is because she's so close to it.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, I do think there's a piece of her. I think she like stuck to her guns. It was like, no, you are the enemy because I've known you to be the enemy for so long, so I can't trust you. But I do think I would be shocked if she wasn't really thinking about, wait, is he trying to do good? Like, what would that even look like? Just thinking more about where Sauron is right now and his path towards good or light or darkness or whatever. Because he was talking a good game. He
was. And Celebrimbor, when she walks up in there, Celebrimbor is like, should we stop? And she's like, no, go ahead, proceed. Right? And so to me, I think she felt like if she had disclosed this information, yes, there's the shame. B, it would stop the forging of the rings. And that to me thought that part of it could have been her ambitions because she gonna get a ring, right?
There's that. And if they stop, everybody goes back to Valinor, including her. She can't go and find Sauron and fight him.
Yeah. So part of it, I think, is her ambitions, but the other part, I think, too, is like, well, we've got this power. It's going to help our people. I don't want to stop that. So, and like you said, like we would all have to leave Middle Earth. And if I leave Middle Earth, I can't continue this hunt for Sauron. Mm-hmm. But now my thing is like, I just want to see the case that she's going to make to validate why she's still hunting Sauron, I think, is what it is. Or maybe she thinks the rings could be helpful in destroying Sauron.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if people are going to be on her side when she's like, no, I'm still like going after this dude. If they're going to be like, okay, cool, go ahead, do what you got to do. Or if they're still going to like push back against her. Is this going to cause a rift between Elrond and Galadriel now that he knows? So many questions I have.
I think he's just gonna trust them blindly because that's how he is with his friends. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
So I know I can't know the answers to everything. If you tell me you're good, I trust you, and I will trust your judgment.
That's what it seems like he's doing because he's like, oh, I should have trusted you, and I won't make that mistake again. And here this comes, right? He's noticing that she's choosing not to tell everyone what happened with Halbrand. And so he's like, well, I guess I got to trust her. And maybe she's making this decision for the right reasons. I don't know if I could have done that.
Elrond's like journey with trust is so interesting.
Yeah.
Because at some point he gets to like, spoiler, Isildur, like not doing the thing that he trusted him to do. And then he gets to like, the Lord of the Rings stories where like, I don't know. It's just, I was just sitting here thinking like, this man Elrond, he's trusting people a lot, but he's been burnt over the years.
Letting Elrond, I mean, not Elrond, letting Isildur walk out of Mount Doom with that ring is the most wild thing to me. Especially now that we're getting the Rings of Power and like we're seeing this backstory. I'm just like,
Kick him in Mount Doom.
I'm like, you are 1,000 years older than him.
Spartan kick him into the fire.
Should have tossed that man into the lava. Wow.
Let him walk away.
Speaking of,
yes,
Sauron finally arrives in Mordor. We see that, right?
He does. We see him walk into Mordor, and that's how the episode ends, right? There's lightning, the lava's flowing. We see his little eye do a thing. And so that's how we end our season. And I was, man, first of all, how did he get back? But
back over 7 days, probably.
You think he walked? He definitely probably stole a horse. I'm sure. I know he would have stole a horse. But I was just like, dang, you got back pretty fast. But okay. Because, we see that it takes like 6 days or something like that, 6 or 7 days to get from Eregion. So I was just like, okay, sure.
Oh, the one thing I did want to say is I think Halbrand injured himself.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That whole thing was a ruse.
Yeah.
For sure. Or if not injured himself, maybe he like faked it. Like, I don't know, manipulated his body to look like it was hurt and then he healed himself. I don't know, type thing. That's what I was getting. Thoughts about Sauron walking into Mordor? Lauren?
I think he's about to square up with Adar.
He's ready.
They have to. There's no other choice. But
because we know they got beef in the streets. I think it's on site.
Ooh, you know who you gonna see before then?
Who?
Isildur.
You think?
I don't see why not. Isildur's still out there.
He is.
It's a possibility.
I mean, anything could happen, but oh no. I think he's marching straight, simply walking into Mordor, straight to the front door, and being like, Adar, come out and play. I just want to talk. I just want to talk. I ain't gonna do nothing. It's just me. I just want to talk. I think that's what he's gonna do.
I'm by myself. I'm unarmed.
And I'm waiting. And I want to see that moment when Adar realizes who he is. I can't wait for that exchange. I can't wait for that. All right, y'all. So that was the finale. That was our episode. Amazing things happen. Before we move on to our final thoughts of the episode, y'all know how I do. I love to spit out my favorite quotes from the episode. So the first one I have is from Elrond. Constraint can be the very progenitor of invention. And I love that because I feel like invention really comes out of scarcity, really comes out of what do we do now? Where do we go? We're on the brink of death. Oh my God, guess what? We've got a cure. Yay. Or we can drive cars now. Whoop, whoop. We got the wheel. We got fire, right? So I love that. It also feels like such a evil twist now knowing that Halbrand is Sauron and how he was the spark in the creation of these rings with the mithril and everything. The next one is from Nori. Only you can show what you are. You choose by what you do. And it just felt very Harry Potter-ish to me. I think, is it?
It was Sirius in the movies, but I think it's Lupin in the books. Who's like, we have light and dark in all of us. It's just which side do we choose to align with?
There you go, right? Because Harry's like, they're just evil, and they're like, right? It's not that simple, right? Mm-hmm. It's your choices that define who you are. You get to pick and choose who you are. And the last one I have is from The Stranger. Alone, it's a journey. Now adventures, they must be shared. I love it. I live for stuff like that.
That was such a good one because it ties directly into The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and them writing the books about their adventures, right? I forgot the name of it, but they called their journeys adventures. So I thought that was super cute.
Yes, I love it. So those were my quotes of the episode. let's jump into our final thoughts of the episode. Did y'all get all the answers that you needed?
I got the main ones. Who's the stranger? Who's Sauron? Those are the main two, right?
Yeah.
I think the other one that we were kind of waiting for was like, when are we going to see something about the rings, like more concretely? And we saw that too.
Mm-hmm.
I think in that sense, those are like the main things that needed to be answered before the season was over, and I think they did that. I don't know if you guys had anything else that you really wanted answered before the season ended.
No, I think they hit everything.
Yeah.
Towards the end, they answer all
Yeah.
the questions. No.
I think
Now,
yeah,
I
I think
guess
they go
the
ahead.
next step is, I guess, season 3 is the creation of the other rings. Season 2.
Yeah.
I guess that'll be the big thing. Who gets the other rings? Like,
Right.
who
How
gets the
how
9?
does
Who gets the 7?
how does Sauron walk into there and help them create those rings? Like what happens there? Yeah, so I felt like we got the big answers that we needed, and even though Gandalf's name wasn't said, just knowing that okay, this is a wizard, this is where he's going, this is what we're gonna do, to me was satisfying enough. I don't know about everybody else, but those were satisfying enough for me. Did y'all miss Durin, Disa, Arandir, all our other folks? Because we didn't get them in this episode.
We didn't get them in this episode, and really, just to remind the audience, where we left off was Durin and Disa. Durin has kind of been disinherited, like he's no longer heir to the throne in Khazad-dûm, but Disa's going to stick beside him. That's where they ended. And then Arondir, Bronwyn, Theo's stupid behind. They're on their way to a old Numenorian colony somewhere, like in the Southlands, out of the way from what is now considered Mordor. So they're like on a journey somewhere, taking a trip. Did I miss them? Yes. Yes.
That did not sound convincing, but okay.
For this episode, if they would have added them in, I almost feel like it would have been too much.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say. It would have felt like too much, but I always love me some Durin, and I always want to see Arondir on my screen. So.
Yeah, boo Arondir.
Boo. What about you, Lauren?
One of the questions I have is for the next season is, how will they bring back Celeborn? Because he's supposed to be alive, even though she says he's dead.
Galadriel's husband.
Galadriel's husband. Yes, that is. So yes, that is a good point.
Okay.
That's a thought. That's a thought.
Where else could he be? We've been everywhere. I mean, not everywhere, but I mean, like, maybe he's a rune.
That'd be interesting.
Because there's only two ways this story could go. Either the husband is really dead, and then she left her kid somewhere.
Which would not surprise me, honestly.
Right. Or she's going to meet her husband again, and they're going to have a kid again. But it doesn't make sense if...
Elrond's already walking around the earth?
Yes. And
where has he been
born yet?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, where have you been all this time? How are they going to make it make sense? I think that's a great point. I don't know. I'm interested to see if that's something that they will address in season 2.
I'm gonna assume that she has a nanny somewhere.
And the nanny's like, I hope I'm getting paid overtime. When is she coming back?
Because what we have to keep in mind is 1,000 years is nothing for an elf.
Yeah, definitely
it's like
not.
a blink. So the baby could be somewhere that's already been born, and someone else is taking care of a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. This is true. I don't know. So was
for that kid not? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. For the kid to not what?
For the kid not to be born yet, and the whole Elrond thing is like,
it's a little weird.
Yeah,
it gives grooming
Game of Thrones.
I'm gonna marry my baby to this old man kind of thing. Very weird. Very weird. But hopefully we'll find out. I'm hoping we'll find out more. So was the finale satisfying for y'all? Like, in terms of how the whole season went and how it ended, like, were you like, all right, they did the thing?
They stuck the landing. They did what they needed to do to finish off this season in a satisfying way. So my answer is yes. Where I'm at, though, is I don't know that I feel particularly called to be excited for a second season. Meaning, I think they gave me enough. This is going to sound weird, but like me watching this as a prequel, I think they gave me so much backstory that I can fill in a lot of what happened in this season to what happens in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Which might sound weird, but like I don't feel like there's any like huge mysteries. Like
I disagree, because we gotta find out how those other rings are made.
That is not, yeah. It's about the ring.
So it's like I don't know that like seeing the how of that part is enough.
If it matters
to feel vested into it. Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm very invested into it because I need to know how he walks into Khazad-dûm and convinces all of them. I need to know what men he's going to round up and how he's going to convince them, how they turn into slaves. Yeah.
I don't know, Tamari, when we were talking before, you said who might get one of those rings. You want to say it?
Oh, I think Pharazôn's going to get one. I think Pharazôn's going to be the main, the main, what do they call him? Is it a right?
The Wraith King?
Yeah,
right. Wraith.
I think it's Wraith.
WRAFTS, I think.
Whatever. I think Pharazôn's is going to be one of them, if not the main one. I think he's like he is like so primed to be one of the men that like definitely wants one of the rings. And I think that they've done a decent job beginning to set that up. I don't think we're going to see it for a while, but I do think that he's going to be one of them.
So we think Sauron's going to go back to Numenor.
Yes. And or he'll run into Pharazôn when the Numenorians make their way back over.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. That's a good setup. We talked about where's Galadriel's husband. Will we ever meet Isildur's brother? I think the things surrounding their family was the most that was left unanswered. But again, I don't think I care that much to find out. But like, yes, Isildur's brother. Who was the voice calling out to him from the West or whatever? Is it his mom? Because I don't know if you know, but Lawrence probably knows that Isildur's brother does come to Middle Earth. So,
we have to meet him again because they have.
He's out there.
To kingdoms.
Mm-hmm. So he's out there. They established kingdoms in Middle Earth. So. What's the deal? What's the story? What has his brother been learning? I don't know. I'm curious to see if we get those in season 2.
I want to know how Isildur survives that cave-in. I do want to know that.
You know, people, story. He crawled out.
Yeah, it should be good.
It fell, but it landed in a triangle over him, so he had enough space to crawl out.
That's probably exactly what happened, but he crawled out and did what? Like, they were around for a minute.
Yeah.
And how is he not blind when Muriel is?
They did her dirty on that. They really did.
We really did, and so did Lawrence earlier. So let's
forget.
He's like, she's gonna see through. Wow.
So we know we're heading to Rune, and we have the question: will we see other wizards? But now that Lawrence has revealed that this is where the wizards reside, I think it's clear to say that we are gonna get more wizards, right?
Yeah.
We may not see all of them. We may just see just Saruman.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the books the blue wizards, they don't really talk much about them. They talk about they came to Middle Earth and then they did not stay on mission. So in the books they don't talk about them. They talk about Radapast, whatever you pronounce his name. And Gandalf and Saruman. The other 2 wizards, the blue wizards, they
just went off, did their thing.
Yeah, they went off and did their thing. So we just might only meet Saruman.
Okay. We'll see. I mean, I'm curious to see what they'll pull off for season 2. I'm happy. I'm genuinely happy with what we got in season 1. It was a great ride. I thought it was a great story. It gave me so much more insight and so much more to think about in terms of, when it comes to The Hobbit and when it comes to Lord of the Rings and everything like that. Any final thoughts on the season, guys, as a whole?
Yeah, the way that this, and I knew this from the last episode, the episode before this, that I am now going to go back and actually watch the Hobbit movies and rewatch the Lord of the Rings extended versions. Now that I have this backstory, I feel like it's going to, as you mentioned earlier, Nessa, it's going to elevate the story in a way that I just did not understand before.
Yeah. What about you, Lawrence?
I think I might. I was talking about going back and look at it because there's things that you watch something 3 or 4 times and you will still find something in the 5th time.
Yeah. As a book reader and like with the knowledge that you have, was the overall season satisfying to you? Did it add anything for you, or are you kind of like, I could have done without it?
It didn't add anything to it. I think more importantly, no, it didn't. It didn't add anything.
Okay.
To be honest.
Okay.
So you didn't need it.
You could have done
visually, it was pleasing, but I didn't need it.
Okay, that's interesting.
But I still want to watch the next season.
Yeah, of course, because you love the show.
I still want to see Numenor's fall. I still want to see the ring being created. I still want to see everything else that happens. How he convinces, the 9 and the 7 to get the to take the rings.
I mean, he has to get the mithril first, right? So he's gonna go back. I wonder if he unleashes.
Right.
Ooh. Okay.
Right.
I'm on one today. Y'all better give me my props.
Right.
This is why adventures should be shared.
Because as we all know, the Balrogs are weapons of Morgoth. Like that, those are his. That's his armor.
Ooh. Okay.
He got the mithril. It was just like, hey, you right there. Just grab some for me.
Just down into the hole.
Yeah, man. He has to get that mithril. We have to see the Balrog again. Durin is going to make it to king. I think it's pretty obvious that that's going to happen. So how that happens, we'll have to see. Elrond and Durin, I hope, get to meet up once again. So we'll have to see that. There's definitely a lot to see.
Yeah. And so one more question I got for you, Lawrence. So you said you could have done without the show. Now, is it because of the information that's given in the show, or is it partially like the pacing of the show? Like, what didn't do it for you? I'm really upset. What didn't do it for you?
So the Hellbrand whole story is like, it wasn't you don't need it. I guess for the show, you needed it, but for the books, it's like, you didn't really need that.
Okay.
I think more importantly, I just want to see what Galadriel does.
Okay.
Like, I just want to see her story.
She's the most compelling part.
Yeah, the rest how does she become queen of the forest? Like,
yeah. And why she didn't do nothing at that time. When they came to her, when they strolled up in her forest, she was like, here's a little information. Godspeed. And she sent them on their way. She didn't show up to no battles. She didn't do nothing, boy. Jeez. I mean, she sent soldiers, but still, I guess. Yeah. All right.
So one other
thing
really that I want to call out about this, like, and I hate to do this, like but we're watching both shows at the same time. House of the Dragon is almost over, and now this is over. To the point about, like, did you need the show? So the House of the Dragons, just really quickly, is more. There's a book written about it. It's more about the histories. You don't get a lot of the backstory and the nuances, but you get like the main plot points, the main events. Something that the show gave us in the first episode of House of the Dragon is something that no book readers knew, that no one knew at all, and that made watching this season almost necessary to get that background to the stories we already knew. And I just want to point it out that in contrast, Lawrence, what you're saying is that this show didn't give readers anything additional to a story that they already knew.
No,
right?
it didn't.
That's a good point. Because, like, getting that information in House of the Dragon, it made you look at all the events that followed differently.
Yeah.
It gave a different context.
Yeah.
And so maybe book readers of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit don't feel like what happened here gave us context. Even though for me, as just a movie watcher, it gave me more context in terms of Galadriel. But
yeah,
I guess for anybody else, it doesn't. But we still got a lot of show. We know they dropped a Billy on like 5 seasons.
They did. Yeah. Again, I just want to call out, like, is this a good prequel? I guess is the question. And we've seen this even with like Harry Potter series and the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Like, those movies aren't all the way great, but we are getting information that helps shape our understanding of what we see. Everything from Credence and like who his father is to like the relationship between Dumbledore and his brother. Like, we're getting all this extra stuff that helps us look at the Harry Potter story a lot differently. And what we're saying here, I think Rings of Power is doing that too. Like, learning Galadriel's backstory is giving us way more context about the Galadriel we meet in Lord of the Rings. Yeah. But it's not exactly the same. So
prequels are hard, man. Prequels are hard.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, it was just prequels are tough. All right, guys, thank you for joining us. Our special guest, Lawrence, thank you so much coming through with your expertise. The laughs, I will never forgive you for that Muriel joke. But thank you so much for coming on with us. Guys, make sure you follow us. We are at @casualfangirls_ on Instagram and now on TikTok.
TikTok.
The old chicks have finally made it to TikTok. We are on YouTube, Casual Fangirls. Like, subscribe, follow, do all of the things. As always, I'm Nessa.
And I'm T.
Once again, thank you, Lauren. And together we are the Casual Fangirls. We'll be seeing you guys soon. Take care.